Good afternoon or good evening, wherever you may be listening to us from here on this big, beautiful planet we call Earth. This is Michael Cross here with another edition of Unlock the Door Radio here on UCY TV Productions. Hey, before I begin, I gotta do something that the mainstream media does all the time, but at a much greater scale. In fact, that's what we're going to talk about, is the mechanisms of media control, and why, basically, it doesn't matter whether you call yourself right-wing, left-wing, whatever. This is something that you need to and should recognize when it comes to the mainstream media in the United States. But before I begin, like as I said, a plug here. I would encourage people to subscribe to this station if you're listening to this later on YouTube. And also, if you like dystopian literature, check out my new book, The Destiny of Our Past. You can find that on Amazon, and you might not see the story of Noah quite the same way after reading this book. Okay, just a warning. Anyway, and it is science fiction. So, anyway, let's go ahead and begin. I interviewed Noam Chomsky a few years ago on this show, and it was on American exceptionalism. You can look at my YouTube station and scroll down and find that. It's a really interesting interview. Nothing really has changed within what you could call the military-industrial entertainment complex. But I'm going to just deal with the entertainment complex right now and deal with what Chomsky writes about in his book, Manufacturing Consent, the 5 filters of the mass media machine. Now, the thing is, a lot of times, unfortunately, people have not really thought about the corporation that is the news. In fact, I think a lot of times people think it's kind of like a public service thing. You know, you turn the TV on, you listen, and, you listen to the news programs, and you figure, well, these are put on for our information. Well, that's not true, okay? I wouldn't even say, you could say that's secondary to many other factors. In fact, you couldn't even say it's secondary. It's information in and of itself is not the desire, nor is it the intent, nor is it the goal of the mass media. All right? Now, you may get information, but again, that's secondary. It's like watching a commercial dealing with food and, advertising food and thinking it's trying to educate you on nutrition. It's not the case, okay? It's just trying to get you to eat the food, just like TV shows. And, I'm including the news on the major networks. It's designed to get you to watch. All right? But let's go ahead and deal with this concept of why you may not be getting information, and you might actually just be getting propaganda from the mainstream media. Okay, first of all, I would encourage people to, it's still up there on PBS, you could check the documentary called The Merchants of Cool. In fact, you could just Google The Merchants of Cool / Media Giants. And even though this documentary is a decade old or more, it will actually show just how concentrated the media is. Okay? It's not spread out. It may have different titles. It may have different network names. But it's all owned by the same, basically 5 or 6 corporations in the United States. Okay? And that concentration is getting even thicker. It's coming together more. I wouldn't doubt if unless, of course, you used antitrust, anti-monopoly legislation that's on the books in the United States, but it seems like no one's going to do that against the media or the tech giants. you could wind up with just one source of media in the future. I would not doubt it. But anyway, let's go in here. The first of these media filters that keeps people from getting really accurate information is, first of all, it has to do with that ownership. All right? The thing is, you have to consider that if, first of all, this is something that's really hard to pound through people, that the media is a corporation. Just like McDonald's sells hamburgers or Burger King, just like Apple sells phones, just like Ford sells cars. The media sells a product, and it is owned by a corporation. The corporation wants to bring in money for its shareholders and so forth, and that is extremely important. And you can just look at these conglomerates. They are out for profit, and they'll do what's necessary to be able to get that. So it's just like if you're selling hamburgers at a restaurant, you may explore ways of making the taste better. And getting people to come in, and sometimes that might include making your hamburger that will bring in people because it tastes great. And if we go by evolutionary psychology, humans are programmed to put the calories on. All right, it's not necessarily a bad thing. But we are programmed to go for those things that have lots of calories. And so you might put sauces on that hamburger that they taste good, but by the time you're done with it, someone's eating this thing, and, unless they're getting adequate exercise, they're going to get really out of shape. Now, of course, you could sell burgers that are highly nutritious and low calorie, but you may not get as many people coming in. And the media is no different. They're going to look at ways to get people to watch, whether that's sensationalism, whether that's showing destruction, negativity. Everyone loves action shows, where you get these evil guys going out and knocking down buildings and, threatening the world. And, the psychology is no different when it comes to what attracts us to media. Negativity sells. When they talked about shock and awe when they were bombing Iraq, the ratings went up when you were showing those explosions over Baghdad. Of course, those explosions were representing people getting killed, but they sure looked like a neat fireworks display, didn't they? And, if you watch news shows, and I don't care which ones now, on network TV, there's lots of glitz, it's almost like, I don't know, last time I tuned in to one of the networks, I won't mention which one, I thought I was watching one of those entertainment shows where, they have all the music coming in and, the cameras coming down really fast and it's where they have, all these contestants trying to win, be the final one. The thing is that this is what media is ultimately, is profit. All right? They're not turning it out for your information. And they will make it to where it sells. And it doesn't mean it has to sell to the most intelligent people. If 10% of the population actually really gets into analyzing news and information and what causes what, they really employ analysis when it comes to things going on in the world and things happening to them. And yet you also have, let's say, 50% that just want to see something fun and lights and almost like you're walking into a Vegas casino. And, They don't really want to think that much. They just kind of want to be told what's going on, little sound bites and, Twitter feed type news broadcast. 50% of the people, that's a lot more money than 10%. And so you're going to gear your news to that 50. You're going to find out what will sell to the most people. You're going to get down to the demographics of your audience. Well, who's watching this? Who's watching that? What kind of people watch news programs incessantly? I mean, there's a lot of people, and, not just old people either, that will, in the background, they'll turn a news show on that repeats. And then it repeats again and again. Nothing new has happened. All right? Nothing new has happened. But you're hearing the same news over and over with the same, commercials and stuff like that. All right? You're appealing to that because you're trying to sell a product. All right? And that's what it's all about. If you feel like you're highly intelligent and you get insulted watching American news, sorry, you're probably not part of the group that buys the products that's sold on that program. So you're not as important. All right? You're unless you're one of the, unless you're one of the target. Now, and that brings us to advertising. And the advertisers are the ones who are paying for all this. And so they want audiences. And so in other words, you're looked at by the media, like I said before, as a demographic. Racially, economically, age, gender, all these things are taken into account when analyzing what's going to be on that news program. Okay? Again, it's not designed to educate so much as it is just to bring you in. Because the advertiser wants to expose people to their product. And there's nothing wrong with that, really. Okay? They're wanting to expose people to their product, and they want as much bang for the buck as they can get. So they're going to be looking at things nowadays, and this is, of course, a new term as opposed to when Chomsky turned out this book with the internet, and that's clickbait. And so you're seeing a trend now that headlines are looking more tabloidish. News shows are getting a little bit more controversial in how they're dealing with their bias. And you see this bias, and you're like, how can they get away with that? How can they write this kind of article? Like if it's a magazine or newspaper, this is so offensive. And you click it on, and you know what? What you do when you click on that link is you're telling the advertiser that this is what sells the product. So if I'm an advertiser and someone's written something about, I don't know, why saying Merry Christmas is fascist or something, I know I'm going to get a lot of people angry if I write that. But the advertiser's going to look and see that probably drives in a lot of audience. And whether that audience is angry or whether that audience is happy, they still, if they click it on, they're going to see the advertising there. Okay? So sometimes I think the media may be just trying to be more antagonistic towards, for instance, Trump or someone like that, to bring in more views. And the irony is it's the conservatives that are going to go see the stuff that's infuriating conservatives, and it's the liberals who are going to see stuff that's infuriating the liberals. Okay? And, the advertisers are the ones that make out on it. But that's the very important factor here, too, is let's say the advertiser has a product. I'm not even going to name a product here specifically, but they have a product that benefits from something that's going on in the world that is not so nice, be it deforestation, be it child labor, or other things that might be considered, or they're closing their plants down in, let's say, the Midwest of the United States and they're moving to some other country. The media is not going to really, if you're a corporation that controls the media and you want those advertisers not to be upset, because we still have an oligopoly. I mean, there is some choice. They can go other places. You're probably going to shy away from those kinds of news stories. Or the way you deal with the news story will be done in such a way as to minimize the negativity that's going to be directed towards the corporation that's doing this in the first place, if they're also a major sponsor of ads in your format. So therefore, advertising is critical. I remember, I think they've really cut back on people's ability to advertise tobacco. But I just remember back in the 70s, when I was in school, you would get these articles, you get these women's magazines that would talk about all the negative things associated with some little thing out here that really didn't affect that many people, but yet they'd run cigarette ads, and you'd very, very rarely, if ever, see an article that was talking about why we have to really cut back on smoking. And that seemed ironic unless you realized that the cigarette companies were paying vast amounts of money to run ads in these magazines. So therefore, you're not going to bite the hand that feeds you. All right? You might run a token article once in a while, but not in association with the magnitude of the problem. Okay? It would be like, again, let's say you're a preacher in a congregation where half your congregation's divorced. Are you really going to, before you pass the collection plate around, are you really going to start ripping on divorce? Even though the Bible's against divorce? No, that's going to be very dangerous, because you might drive away some of your richest members of the congregation, and so you choose to do something on another subject. And this is the way the media operates as well. All right? And then you get into the idea, his third filter is the media elite itself. Now, the thing is that most people don't even question why it is that you only see a small number of media at presidential conferences. Okay? Maybe people think, well, they're the ones that sent a representative. No, believe me, every single little publication anywhere in the country is going to want to have someone in there to try to grill whoever the president is. Okay, be it a Democrat or Republican, they're going to want someone there so they can say, our reporter asked this question of the president. It's kept down because there's only a certain number of seats. And so when you're in there, you're going to make sure not to really ask something that's going to be so controversial that your boss is going to get a phone call from whoever the presidential staff leader is and asking, well, are you sure you want to have this seat in the future? And maybe you're not going to be invited to these other big White House functions. And this is something that is also existent in all levels of government. The big publications, especially newspapers in this situation, don't want to lose access. So are they going to really rip on congressmen and senators who have high positions? Not really, because they still want access to those people. And this kind of elite thing, when you realize that everyone's going to the same country clubs, everyone's hanging out with each other, that corporations trade back and forth. I mean, someone may be sitting on the editorial board of a large influential newspaper, and then all of a sudden they become a director of a presidential campaign or a senatorial campaign. and then they wind up in a position of influence within a think tank that has a lot of prestige to it. They're just kind of playing like a musical chairs thing. Okay, the elite are not a million different individuals working with their own self-interest. All right? It's a very, 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 very much smaller number than that. And these people know each other by first name, hang out with each other. I mean, face it. I mean, you even see, regardless how you feel about the political spectrum, just look up, before the election, of course, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton. There's pictures of them smiling and hanging out with each other and this sort of thing. And this is how it works. Now, you're not part of that. Okay? But this creates a situation in which you learn what's acceptable. Because, see, in every social class, there's a culture. There is a subculture. This particular class, the influential beltway, they call it, area people, they have, what happens as time goes on is you have an evolution of a way you look at life, a way that you see issues, the way that your values are shaped. What do you support then becomes very important because it radiates from those core values that your subculture has created. So therefore, you don't really get that much argument even, amongst the elite. But, if the press, the higher ups, the corporate leaders and so forth in the media corporations are also part of this, you're not going to get a lot of critical journalism like you think of in these old movies from the 30s and 40s when these guys wearing hats and carrying these big cameras were just trying to get that big scoop, that big expose. It's not like that anymore. Everyone understands that if you're respectable in the media, this is how you go about it. All right? That doesn't mean you don't have things happen in which you could have Trump, for instance, and he could follow a policy that's totally breaking from that. And there will be criticism, but they'll try to rein him in because when he does something that it's almost like behaviorism with a dog or a rat or something. You get really critical when he's kind of breaking from the mold. And then he does something that's for the establishment. All of a sudden, it's praise. Oh, wow, yeah, leader. Oh, look, your poll numbers are going up. Blah, 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 blah. And this is a way that the media can kind of rein in the leaders of a country. Because most leaders in the United States, be they Democrat or Republican, if they don't have a high level of psychopathy, they're going to have a high level of narcissism. And they want that praise. And so they can be brought back in to the fold. And what happens too, because of this, is the governments, the agencies, the corporations and so forth know how to approach the media to get a story or a slant on a story that they want. They have the open door. They're able to, again, they get the access. They're not out there in alternative media land or something like that. They're going to have an ability to get their message to the public. All right? So what you wind up having is a certain set of values that just keep reinforcing themselves, and then they're projected out onto the people, not just of the United States, but of the world itself. All right? So this is why you don't have a lot of real critical, let's examine Senator so-and-so, type of things. Because if everyone's kind of on the same team, maybe you're going to bury a story. Maybe if you find out that some Hollywood director is doing something that he should not be doing with young starlets, maybe that's kind of like, no, because maybe you went to some of the maybe you're, the media head people are going to the same parties and they know these directors and they're like, oh, well, maybe this is something that's not really newsworthy. Okay? But people think that the news media is out there trying to find the news. In reality, not so much. Anyway, now what do you do, and this is number 4 when it comes to what he calls flack. What do you do if someone's not playing along? What do you do when there's other media out there, be they part of the corporate structure or be they alternative media? What do you do if they start reporting news? What do you do if they start getting information? Well, what you need to do is marginalize that person. Okay? So if you get someone that exposes the government, they hack emails, they get information on shady deals going on and stuff like that, then what you need to do is not so much attack them and prove them wrong, because of course if you do that, then what if they're right? It's not like you're going to bring them on and say, wow, this alternative media, be they right-wing, left-wing, libertarian, whatever, found this really great piece of information. No, you either A, you ignore it, or B, you attack it itself. So, you use terms like extreme this or extreme that. You attack the person's credibility. You mock them. You marginalize them to a point that you're hoping that if someone just hears, again, like behaviorism, that you're going to condition the public that when they hear about this media network or personality or whatever, that the first thing that's going to pop in their mind is something negative. Okay, so you make it to where, oh no, we can't believe what this person says, even though they might actually be right. And maybe the alternative media actually brings out all the facts, and they list their sources, and they do all of these wonderful things. And maybe they have a good track record, but no, you can't trust them. Why? Because you've been conditioned to believe you should not trust them. And that really is a huge control mechanism within the United States and its media business. So you may think, well, why didn't Edward Snowden just go to the media and say, hey, I've discovered all this stuff going on? Well, we've already dealt with that in number 3, how the media and the government are kind of like in the same country club. And then, so if you go to the big media and say, I've got this story, are you sure you're going to get it out there? Are you sure you're going to be protected as a source? And, when Snowden did expose all this stuff, how was he treated in the media? A lot of the media just ripped on him like you would not believe. He was not someone that was trying to bring something to light. He was an enemy of the state. He was the bad guy. Don't believe him. No. And look, he went over and is in Russia. Well, he went to where he'd be safe. I mean, Julian Assange has been living in an embassy now for how many years? Snowden, escaped to Russia and then exposed a lot of stuff. But again, if you mention Edward Snowden, and I've done it to people, both Democrats and Republicans, and said something about, yeah, Snowden, did some good stuff. And I'll get reactions from both Democrats and Republicans like, oh, they should string that traitor up, and you're like, well, why is he a traitor? And they can't explain why. They don't know. They don't have a thing where they could say, here is what he did that he should be punished for. No, because the media has just said he's the bad guy. Ooh, yes. And so that's part of the flack. That's part of the making sure that all your sources that are not part of the narrative are kept out, that they are discredited, that they are demonized, or anything else that'll keep people from believing their legitimacy. Okay? Now finally, there is the concepts, as I just mentioned Russia, there is the concept of creating an enemy, an outside target. And that is where you make sure that even though you're reporting some of the bad stuff that your government is doing, that you make sure to point out that there's all these threats in the world, and maybe we need to have surveillance. Maybe we need to have. I would not be surprised if you did a poll amongst the American public and you said, "Oh, terrorism! We need to everyone to when they go through airport security lines, they have to strip bare naked and walk through those lines to make sure that they're not terrorists, carrying something." What do you think the percentage of the American public would be that would say yes to it? Especially if you did a lot of news shows that were like, "Oh my gosh, here's what, someone could hide something in their belly button or something like that." And pretty soon, I think the majority of people would do it. And I don't care how religiously conservative they were. They'd be like, "Well, Martha, better, let's take our clothes off now. We're going to go through the security." Because you create a fear. I was listening to this thing put on by an elite professor. One of the people that kind of comes from one of these kinds of backgrounds I've been talking about. And he said that the elite, they know that they believe a certain way, but one of the best ways they have of keeping the American public in line and believing the same way is through keeping them scared all the time. Oh, the Iranians are going to do this. Okay, well, Iran has what, 1/100th of the United States, full budget on military? Maybe it's 1/50th. I don't know. By the way, did you know that America, it's like, what is it? America spends more on military than, I think it's either the 5 or the 10 next competitors all combined. But then people say, but they're all after us. Are they really? I mean, do we have any threats in Latin America? Is Brazil going to invade the United States in the near future? Canada, well, we're kind of keep an eye out on them in North America. Europe, I mean, they've got their own problems, and I don't think they're going to be, coming after us. Russia, I think would rather just kind of be able to concentrate on what's doing good for Russia instead. I don't think Vladimir Putin wakes up every morning thinking, how can I destroy the United States? All right? But the media tells us a narrative that would make us feel that way. I think actually most of the world nowadays, I mean, you can maybe look at North Korea, not so much as a credible threat. They could be a problem. But if you take a look at how many bases do we have military bases in most countries of the world. All right. And the reason we have that, the reason we have surveillance, the reason we have people that would, yes, actually, and I do believe this, would have their family take all their clothes off and walk through the security line in an airport is because you keep people scared. Okay? The Russians, the terrorists, the this, that, Ebola again, plague, all these kinds of things. All right? Now you do have threats to you. I mean, I'd be more scared about such things as drunk drivers. They kill a lot of people every day. I'd be more scared. I would think that we should be scared of obesity. because it's killing massive numbers of people in the United States. I think we should be scared of the fact that our young people are not learning how to critically think anymore. And by the way, critical thinking, even though that is, for some strange reason, some conservatives think that that is like a left-wing plot. It's not. Critical thinking is neither Democrat, Republican, liberal, or conservative. It's just the ability to be able to see the other person's point of view, examine their credibility, examine sources, and that sort of thing. And seriously, it's just like asking people to learn how to question. And it seems that we're not striving for that anymore. We don't teach that anymore. And the media certainly doesn't encourage it. So, oh, wow, extraterrestrials, pretty soon, aliens and that sort of thing. But this helps to keep people in line. So if you do question, well, I don't think it's nice that we're listened to on our computers by this, that, or whatever entity, and then people say, oh, you're not a very good American. What about those people that want to destroy our way of life? Well, who is it that needs to know what I'm asking the wife to get at the store while she's at the store? Okay? If you are a threat, I think our intelligence services, since we spend so many tens of billions of dollars a year on them, should be able to figure it out. And figure out who they should be listening to. Not every freaking person on the face of the earth. All right? So, but again, the media is going to keep it up to where it's justified. They're going to be giving the news in such a way that people are going to be scared into saying, sure, we'll do that. We'll do that. We'll do this. What do we have to do in order to fill in the blank? Okay. Now, not everyone listens. Not everyone believes the media narrative. There's a growing number of people that are rejecting it. But there is you're going to have to reach a critical mass. You're going to have to get to a point where it's, you look on I'll give you an example. You look at conservative media sites. And what do? That people are quoting other conservative media sites. They're not actually quoting independent outside of that area of expertise and so forth. So really, we don't have this sense of people saying, you know what, I'm going to take matters into my own hands. I'm going to start writing blogs. I'm going to start doing YouTube videos. I'm going to start doing this on social media. I'm going to try to do my part. In fact, I even encouraged it on one social media site. I said, people need to start actually questioning and trying to get other people to question. And someone wrote back and said, oh, it's not my responsibility to get people to think. That's their problem. And I'm like, I responded saying, yeah, but you're not going to win many elections if people don't think. Didn't reply. We need to reach a critical mass to where people will provide a counterweight to the established media, because they're not going to go anywhere. There's enough people that are going to watch and see the advertising, and they may sit there in front of their TV set and, Marge, those damn film news people, sorry, you're watching it and you're watching the commercials. You're encouraging the system that you're condemning. So ultimately, we need to reach a critical mass to where people are not actually plugged in anymore, and they're actually trying to find information from a variety of sources to try to counter this kind of groupthink that we have, not just in the United States, but in Western civilization in general. People have to think. They have to break free. They have to get out of this matrix and be able to understand what's going on and what they can do to counter some of this stuff. Because it does affect them. It affects you, me, everyone around us. Okay? And if we're in a participatory democracy, then just like John F. Kennedy said, the weakest link in the chain of democracy is the least educated voter. And I would include the least active voter. Okay? We need to get that kind of internal locus of control. And when we do that, then you'll see some change. And I'm not saying it's going to all be conservative or all be liberal or this or that or whatever. In fact, I personally think that a lot of the gripes and complaints out there about media are shared by people of all political across the political spectrum. This could be a talking point. You find out that, the person next to you that doesn't agree with you on some stuff, they're not demons. And they can learn you're not a demon. And then we can actually get some stuff going that's actually good. Anyway, this is kind of an addition to the first half of the show I just wanted to go over, and I think it's quite interesting. And that is, if we take a look at an article that appeared in the Washington Examiner on December 28th, 2017, dealing with a Pew, that's P-E-W, Research Center analysis of how the media has treated Donald Trump, then I think we find something quite interesting going on here that I think actually jeopardizes the idea that we can see the media as being what would you say, non-biased. I mean, if we take a look at, I got my dog here in the office. Anyway, sorry for the interruption. Anyway, if we take a look at the way that the media has treated Trump as opposed to other presidents, and we just look at positive coverage during like the first 60 days of a presidency, and we take a look at positive. This is just positive coverage, okay? This is like a yay, he's doing a great job type of news stories, and of course this is looking at the big media in general. All right, we find that Bill Clinton, 27% of the coverage was the yay, Bill Clinton. And then we find that under Bush, it was 22%. Then we find Obama, oh my gosh, it looks like some sort of like cult of personality there. 42% listed here. You look at the article yourself. Positive assessment, 42%. Whereas Trump gets 5%. And then if we look at negative coverage, those kind of stories like, whoa, we found something bad about this person, or we're presenting something bad. Clinton was 28%. Same with Bush, 28%. Obama, 20%. So, it was kind of like the let's be nice to Obama. But negative for Trump has been 62%. Now, my problem is this. Whether you love Trump, whether you think he's angelic, whether you hate Trump and think he's the spawn of Satan, it shouldn't matter in this situation here. We should be getting a coverage that is fairly consistent if we're to believe that the media is fair and unbalanced. So, in my opinion, all the media coverage of presidents should be kind of neither. It should just be, this is what they're doing. This is what they're up to. This is the kind of policies they're doing. This is the things they're doing in regards to pushing legislation and this kinds of stuff. It should be non-biased. Now, of course, there is no such thing as non-bias reporting. George Orwell said all art is propaganda. And essentially, art can also extend to the written word or the televised word, images and so forth. Everything contains a bias, and you can't get around that.
If you were in the media yourself and you're presenting a story, it gives you an opportunity to present what you choose to put out there. What words you use, even the color of lighting and so forth that you use when you're covering the person. So, there's a lot that goes into throwing a story out there. It's not like, maybe it is similar. If you've ever written a letter to the editor, you get to choose the topic. You get to choose how it's presented. You get to choose what the conclusion is. You get to choose what the introduction is. And it's no different even if you are, instead of just being a regular citizen voicing your opinion, if you're someone that's making a 6 or 7 digit income by presenting the news in either a newspaper or in a format such as television. So you're seeing this negativity, but yet at the same time, the irony is that other polls, and this of course is at the end of December 2017, show that Trump and Obama are about, for their first year as presidents, popularity is about the same. It's around 45% approval rating. Now, that says a lot. I mean, it either says, A, that Obama was doing very badly even though the media was covering for him. Gosh, it brings up a editorial cartoon or a meme I once saw. It shows Obama as like a John in a car, and you got a hooker, and it has all the network, the liberal mainstream media networks. She's got a tattoo of all of those on her legs, and basically he makes a comment and she says, whatever you want me to do, type thing. And so even with the media covering for Obama, he had this low of rating. Even with the media attacking Trump, he essentially has this high of rating. And that should say something out there. And maybe this is what's really causing the public to say no to their trust in media. Again, if you just had it fair and balanced, you put on someone that hates Trump, you put on someone that likes Trump if you have a debate. You don't make outlandish statements that are absolutely insane, things. You just imagine some of the crazy stuff out there. Merry Christmas is a code word for white supremacy. Give me a break. I mean, but this is the kind of stuff that's being thrown out there in mainstream media, not some little alternative newspaper that you pick up when you go to the farmer's market or a hippie market somewhere in Oregon. This is mainstream. And that's what's really scary nowadays. So, again, if you drill negativity, I don't care. You could have the most wonderful person on earth, and you can make them, I think it was Malcolm X that said this, the media can tell you who to hate and who to love. And often the person that's really the oppressed is the one that's being, the media is telling you they're the ones to hate. And this is again driving a wedge between the population and their trust in media. Okay, even people, if we're going to keep on with this Trump thing, I know people that are liberal who have just stopped, posting stuff on social media because they've actually stated it's just tiresome. The whole, here's another thing about Trump in the media. It's tiresome. It's not funny. It's not provocative. It's not unique or creative. It's just tiresome. It's given a fatigue. And this could actually cause Trump to get elected again in 2020. If his supporters have had if his opponents have had this, evil thing presented to them constantly, then they're going to have a fatigue, and it's not going to be that they're just going to suddenly become energized and they're going to go out there and put every ounce of effort into defeating him. It's almost, I think it could actually result in a malaise amongst those who oppose him, to where they're just going to be kind of like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. Especially since we know the Democrats are going to put up someone who's an establishment candidate anyway, because that's what the Democrats will do. The Republicans would put up an establishment candidate if they could. So this could actually get him reelected. Maybe they're doing him a favor. I don't know. But no matter, it's got to stop. Because I think what's going to happen eventually is people are just going to become cynical towards all press, and they're going to shut off. And this will include the people who support Trump and the people who oppose him. And when they shut off, that's when media dies when it comes to influence. And that is when the media will be able, if they do come up with something that's really earth-shattering, it's like, oh my gosh, we got to be worried about this. We need to analyze this. We need to question this. People are going to go, whatever. Okay? This is not good for democracy. That we need a media that exposes. We need a media that digs deep. But we don't need an activist media. We have that. If you go to liberal colleges and campuses and universities, student newspapers, quite often, activist. As I said, go to a hippie market or a farmer's market or some place where kind of the alternative people hang out. Then you get the alternative newspapers that exist in I think at least most West Coast communities where I grew up in. And you'll expect that, but not from national media. And so as time goes on, it's going to hurt the media. So what can be done? What can actually be done? Some people have started boycotting products that are on networks that just take it to an extreme. This goes both ways. There's people that boycott things that are on conservative programs, and there's people that are boycotting things that are on liberal programs. This is a technique that can be used, but ultimately I'm wondering how effective that is, because what you're going to get is conservatives will jump in and buy products to support their favorite guy, and liberals will jump in and buy products to support their favorite person as well. I mean, with this whole thing with the NFL boycott, I've often wondered, are there some people that are more liberal that never ever set foot in a football game? Maybe their idea of competition is going out and playing golf or something like that. And when they hear that conservatives are boycotting big football, they decide, you know what, I'm just going to go to the game and support them. You wonder how much, but the thing is, I don't think it's going to last too long. You might go to a couple games and think, okay, well, yeah, they're kicking a football around. I mean, that's how I feel about it. I really am not into competitive sports in that sense, because if I'm going to be doing something that is sports related, I'd rather be doing it myself. Get out there and kick a ball with some friends, or play baseball with friends. If I'm going to do team sports, my idea of fun is whitewater rafting, mountain biking, running, swimming, those kinds of things. More individual. I mean, you can do them with other people, but they're still ultimately individual. But I don't think too many people on the left are suddenly going to, keep the football games, in the high profit margin, so to speak. But, boycotting, it's a technique. Another technique is just turn off the program. That's, I guess a lot of people do that, but then, of course, it's what Mark Twain said. If you read the newspapers, if you don't read the newspapers, you're uninformed, and if you read the newspapers, you're misinformed. So, at least in a sense, if you know what they're saying, you're knowing what the current events that are taking place. The other thing is beware of clickbait. Because when you click on an article, let's say someone's written something so audacious you cannot believe it, so you click it on just to read it to get angry.
maybe share it with friends, saying, I can't believe this person is saying this. Can you believe this? And they all get the righteous indignation and so forth. The irony to that is you're helping the revenue of whoever wrote the article, because all of a sudden they're generating maybe 3 or 4 times more clicks than the other people working for that newspaper, magazine, or network. And that means the advertisers can be charged more because you're driving traffic in. I said it earlier in the show. It helps to, write stuff controversial now. I mean, the rate we're going to, a lot of the stuff that comes across as fake news, both from the right and the left. And I've seen examples of both. I mean, the stuff that it's just designed for you to come to an article. It's usually, too good to be true type stuff, or too audacious to be true, but you still click it on because you're like, what in the world is this all about? Usually I just say, if it's not on Drudge Report, if it's that crazy, then if he's not going to throw out and say, hey, look how crazy this is, then probably it's not real. Okay, that's one good filter you could use. If it's crazy, if it's something so far to the extreme that it's just unbelievable, well, it's probably unbelievable if it's not been out on some of those sites like Drudge. And, but this comes from the right and the left. I've seen both. Okay? And the thing is that the best thing is just don't click those on. But the problem is that now the media, the mainstream media, seems to have learned something from the technique, and now they're doing their headlines very like, oh my gosh, and you click on. And this is not good. So maybe the first paragraph it doesn't actually say what you thought it was going to say. It's kind of the innuendo story. Well, what if this is the case versus this is the case? But you've clicked it on and you've driven the revenue up. The other alternative, and I say this over and over and over and over and over again, is start doing things to spread information to the public. You could sit there and think, wow, no one knows anything. I watch these like Mark Dice videos, and people are so uninformed out there when he interviews them and asks them things about the Constitution or world events. Well, you know what you could do? Try to do something to help spread the word of truth and see if maybe you can uplift the national norms for information and knowledge. Believe me, the mainstream media is not going to do it, so why don't you do it? I mean, you're one person, maybe you can reach 100, maybe 1,000. What if maybe a dozen people out of that 1,000 share it, and then it reaches another 50,000 people? You never know. And this could make a difference in elections. It can make differences in just overall knowledge and in people's personal outlook on things. Anyway, that's all the time we have. I encourage you to not just sit there, but to actually get involved.